welcome to another episode of Hitchhiker's Guide to IT podcast, brought to you by Device42. On this show, we explore the ins and outs of modern IT management and the infinite expanse of its universe. Whether you're an expert in the data center or cloud, or just someone interested in the latest trends in IT technology, the Hitchhiker's Guide to IT is your go-to source for all things IT. So, buckle up and get ready to explore the ever-changing landscape of modern IT management.
Hello and welcome to the Hitchhiker's Guide to IT podcast series. It is brought to you by Device42. I am your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney, and today we're talking about unlocking the Cloudscape, navigating the benefits and the challenges of multi-cloud. And we have a very special guest today. Arun Pattanayak is the technical specialist at Microsoft. He is also a keynote speaker on data and AI. So perfect for the topic at hand. Arun, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for introducing me. I am a technical specialist at Microsoft. I exclusively work within the financial services, and I specialize in the Azure data and AI. Looking forward to our talk today.
As am I, and we really have a lot to get to. And this is such a great topic because there's so much technology out there. There's a lot of really good technology, and sometimes we need a few layers of that technology. So we're going to talk about, as we said, benefits and challenges of multi-cloud. So let's start here. What are the technical benefits of going multi-cloud?
The whole point of cloud is that you are offloading the responsibility of managing your virtual machines or data servers to a third party. So you focus on your business use case, your application, and not the maintainability of the infrastructure underneath. And with that, one of the main reasons why people look to cloud is that, pretty soon they feel like their application have outgrown the limitation of the data center that they have, or the data center requires hardware refresh that they would, rather not do, or it's too expensive. Cloud has a business model of consumption. So you pay for use and you always get the latest of everything. But with that, the cloud itself is a data center. So it's you are offloading the responsibility to another vendor who owns the data center, and they offer it to you as cloud. But under the hood, they are still using data center. And when you are trying to scale, most of the major cloud providers like Azure or AWS or GCP, they have a lot of data center, but still there is a limit to how many they have, and they all keep opening data centers. But of course, the demand is a lot more than for them to keep up. If a business is large enough and they really want a disaster recovery, if they really want a business continuity, sometimes it might be good for them to not rely on only one cloud provider and have their applications and data replicated on multiple cloud providers. So in case one cloud provider, one data center is having a problem, they could switch to same application and the same type of data in another cloud provider. So that gives them a scalability beyond what a single cloud provider can provide. That's one of the primary reasons why people look to multi-cloud. And the other reason is, of course, it's vendor lock-in. If you use one cloud provider as your only provider, then you have to use what they have. If some other cloud provider has something else that you want to take advantage of, you might be limited there, or over time you might find that this cloud provider is getting expensive. But you don't have an easy way to switch. But if you have your application and data replicated across multiple clouds, then you can anytime downsize one and move stuff to other more easily rather than having to start from scratch.
Yeah, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds, or multi-worlds, so to speak, but you don't consistently have to shop around because, as you said, that can be really time consuming. In this way, you kind of have your foot in a few different places and it's much easier to navigate accordingly. So we've talked about the benefits, which clearly there are a lot of benefits there, but what are the technical challenges of multi-cloud?
Cloud tries to use a native API-based way to manage. But, as these things are getting created so fast, most of the vendors come up with their own APIs and their own way of doing things. The industry hasn't yet gotten together to create a generic framework, a standardized API for all of this. So as a result, that vendor lock-in issue is kind of still there per cloud, that if you use one cloud provider's API, it works in a certain way, and another cloud provider works in another way. So now if you are multi-cloud but your application owner is still the same, they now have to know the multiple APIs of all these different clouds. They have to know how their application is deployed in each cloud. So on one cloud provider, the service might be called something, it might work in a certain way. Another cloud provider, it might work in another way. It might use a different protocol, different API. But your application owner now has to know how each of these work and be able to manage across the cloud in a way that your application is not disrupted, and you are still able to take the best advantage of what that specific cloud vendor has to offer, and that can be challenging.
You briefly talked about, being a part of several entities to make it easier to downsize with one or maybe upgrade with another, because they do all offer different things. And sometimes you don't want to miss out on what one company is offering. So with that, let's talk about switching from the technical side to the actual business benefits. Can you kind of lay them out for us, the business benefits of going multi-cloud?
The benefit to business is twofold. The first is the business continuity aspect of it, which is like, if you use multiple cloud, then you have access to a lot more data center than you would from a single cloud provider. So you now have your data and your application replicated across many data centers. So if one data center of one cloud goes down, you are able to switch to another one. That's number one. Number two is you can take advantage of newer features. If one cloud provider came up with something new that you want to take advantage of, you can. And the other advantage is the cost advantage, right? Having multiple cloud kind of gives you a better negotiating power, that you can talk to your cloud provider that, look, the other cloud provider is giving me this much, if you're not give me that deal, I'm going to switch there, right? So that power of negotiation plus the power to use the latest of any cloud provider at any time, plus having a lot of option to do your application and data replication to improve business continuity. Those are the primary advantages for a business.
So switching gears now, because clearly, while it can be very beneficial to be involved with several kind of entities there are also some challenges. So let's talk about that. What are the business challenges with multi-cloud?
Each of the cloud services, depending on what type of industry you are in, there are regulations. For example, a FedRAMP certification is kind of a must on most of the cloud services, right? The security implementation is slightly different in different cloud. So as, depending on which industry you are in, you might have a set of compliance requirements, a set of controls that need to be implemented in a certain way for you to be able to use a cloud service so that it's approved by regulator and it meets your company guideline. But different cloud providers implement security in a different way. Now it's up to you to work with the cloud provider to make sure the compliance that you are trying to meet, the security requirement that you have for your application within your organization are implemented using the particular set of technology that the cloud provider has, and your policy is same no matter which cloud you use, but the implementation can be different. So you have to ensure that implementation is done in a way that it still applies to your company compliance policy. That's number one. Number two is, we talk about having multiple cloud makes it easy to kind of switch between. I mean, yeah. So if you have an API, you have multiple URLs. So you can switch to one URL in one cloud to another URL in another cloud. But in terms of data, like companies are using petabytes of data. It's not practical. It's not really easy to just move petabytes of data from one cloud provider to another cloud provider, within seconds. Most people even, ship out data in boxes, and it takes days, over a week, to copy that amount of data, because people do that manually, because that way it's actually faster than, over the wire, where the bandwidth might be slow. Right. And plus the security. If you're keeping the network connectivity open for a longer time, you are, exposing it for threat, for outside attack for a longer time. So that is a challenge. So data portability is not as easy as, application or API portability.
Yeah, and there is so much data out there. I mean, when you even think personally, let's not talk business for a minute, but think of our phones. I don't know about you, Arun, but just the amount of videos and pictures that I have in my phone, and that's an individual person. But when we're talking about companies, there is so much data that they have to keep track of. So let me ask you this. People are listening to this podcast. Maybe they're not multi-cloud, or maybe they're kind of just on the verge, or just, have one or two things in the mix. What would you say to them? Where do they start? And what are some key things that they need to keep in mind as they kind of go on this journey?
There are a lot of new technology coming up. There are a lot of new entrants into the cloud. I mean, the big ones like Azure, AWS are there, but a lot of the SaaS companies are coming up with their own cloud, and it can be overwhelming. What I would say to most organizations is, don't look outside. Don't look at what people are coming up with, right? Look at your business, right? So it should be about you. What is your business? What type of applications do you have? What is the SLA that your application needs to meet? It really comes down to, if your application is supporting a set of customer, what is your contract with those customer? What does your SLA say that you are going to offer this application with this much uptime, or you are going to offer them this data with this much latency? So the technical specifications that you have to meet, that's your primary driver. Which cloud you use is secondary. Which type of service you use is secondary. You start from what you need to keep your business running today, to make your business competitive and resilient in the future. You start with your set of requirements, irrespective of whether that exists today or not. Once you identify your own requirement, then you start evaluating different cloud providers' technology against what you need. And that's how you kind of decide how many cloud. Maybe you don't need 10 cloud. Maybe one cloud might be enough. There are a lot of customers who are 100% on one cloud because their SLA requirements is not that high. On almost every cloud, major cloud providers, they offer geo-redundant replication. They have data centers all across the world. So you could replicate your data across the world, even if you are sticking to just one cloud provider, right? Or if you do need another cloud to really make it more resilient, it should start with how much resiliency do you really need, and are you willing to take up the headache of having to manage an extra cloud? Do you have the resources? How would your operations work? So it should start with you, that what you need and what you can handle.
I think that's such an important point that you made, because it's really not one size fits all. And as you said, if one cloud is working for you, then, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We've heard of that old saying, but, clearly if a company is looking to kind of add to that, then you've given them some great advice. Any final closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, there are newer technologies coming up these days where you can unify the cloud management, multi-cloud and your on-prem in a single panel, so that you can manage your resources across different cloud and your on-prem from using that single portal. So no matter which cloud you're using, the way you provision resources and secure resources are kind of uniform across. And as the industry matures, that generalization is happening. And there are partners, different companies are coming up with a way to make that multi-cloud management easier. So I would say, start researching those technologies. And, if you want to be multi-cloud, it's worth investing in that type of technology.
For those people out there who may have questions or they're looking for more resources, can you send them anywhere, Arun?
Yes. Microsoft has, a documentation on the multi-cloud strategy. So Microsoft Learn is one of the places that people can learn about Azure and, different ways that a lot of the Microsoft products are geared towards managing multi-cloud. Definitely, that's a first source to look at. And of course, if you have any specific questions, you can email me. My website is arunpattanayak.com. So connect with me and message me. I would be happy to talk to you.
Arun Pattanayak, and I cannot thank you enough. You're a technical specialist at Microsoft, keynote speaker on data and AI, and I really appreciate your time. And I know the listeners do as well, because it's really important information that you're putting out there and some great tips and guidelines. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to the Hitchhiker's Guide to IT podcast series, brought to you by Device 42. And of course, if you would like to hear more engaging conversations like the one you heard today with Arun, we would invite you to subscribe to the podcast. And you can visit device42.com for more information there as well. Thanks again for joining us. Once again, I'm your host, Michelle Dawn Mooney, and we hope to see you on another podcast soon.